from the New Deal and Dragonette, and he is in Toronto right now, and he's going to
Yes.
talk to us about like how does a musician tackle a global pandemic?
Well, you start by canceling every concert you have in your calendar, which for us was, I think, 23 or 27 or something like that. And then the other phase of, I think in this, however many stages of grief, there's the part that's denial. So the denial part is you rebook them for a couple of months later, and then you cancel those. And then I think we're on our third stage of booking and probably canceling. And so, actually, it's a great question because I didn't know how profoundly it would affect me and many of my colleagues who have, by this time in our lives, it's almost part of our DNA to be not only just performing, which in itself is almost like a drug, but also everything around it, the engagement with fans, the traveling, I wouldn't call it the lifestyle because it's actually pretty exhausting, but the act of being a musician is actually a pretty consuming one. And so this is the longest I've ever been in one place in my adult life, I think since I was 28, one place being like between here and 50 kilometers from here. And it's the longest time I haven't played a live show since I was 28. And that's pretty strange. That's now a long time. So I think I'm not going to speak for all musicians. For me, I have no enthusiasm to sit in a studio and write records, because even that is a very collaborative process. It's way more fun with people. The technological hurdles of doing that, like a Zoom conference thing where people would in theory be able to be playing together, are really, really challenging just because of the latency of getting data from one place to another. And so instead I took out my violin, and which I got when I was 12 and haven't played since I was teaching our mutual cousin how to play violin maybe 15 years ago. And I've also started, and I started playing my saxophones again. And which has amounted, like at times has gotten ridiculous. Like I've actually found myself like in a bathrobe dancing around this farmhouse in the country, playing the saxophone like I was a Pied Piper, and really laughing about everything about what I was doing, playing to nobody in the middle of the country, playing an instrument that's been gathering dust for 15 years.
Of distractions opens up different avenues.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so are there other, you've got a violin, saxophone. How else are you exploring yourself creatively?
Well, from the mundane, which would include, for example, I organized all of the dish rags that I have in my kitchen drawer by size and fabric, which was needing to be done because there was just a big drawer full of random cloths, to a much more, and this I'm actually taking rather seriously, because it's a contemplation about what happens next for music performance. If common sense would say, my job is going to be one of the last that's reinstated as people are returning back to work. And I think because the idea of gathering 500 or 1,000 or 25,000 people in one space and having them dance and sweat and breathe all over each other is probably a long way down the road, whether it's legislated that way or people actually ever return to feeling comfortable with that idea. And as a result, and I think that the paradigm of how people have been playing concerts up until now it's just the result of them always having been that way. And so there's been a demand and an opportunity created to consider what does the concert of 15 years from now look like for kids, for example, who, like my nephew who's 10 and spends his entire life in the world of Minecraft. How are you going to convince the 18-year-old version of him to go and stand in a room and listen to loud music, pay a lot of money to do it, and have no agency and a limited amount of feeling of immersion in that experience compared to what he'll have grown up with in the 10 years between now and when he's a concert goer? And people have tried to make have tried to imagine that and create kind of virtual concerts or live streaming of concerts that, you know, other people are watching. And the really hastily assembled solution to not playing concerts is, you know, whatever, Mariah Carey at home on Zoom and or Lady Gaga or whatever. But in this time, I think there's, and this is what I wonder about, is how do we, particularly my band, but I mean, how do musicians in general contemplate the idea of being able to reach fans in a way that's different than it has been? Because for a long time, it's going to be different. And then on the other side of that, I think it will have been changed. The experience people have had, what their tolerance will have become for watching performance at home or watching it on their phone or their iPad or whatever. And so I've spent a lot of time thinking about that and talking to people who have been stage designers or visual artists or film directors about contemplating like almost a new art form that we can perform in and work with other artists in and deliver something at home that doesn't try to just represent a concert that you missed seeing live, but doesn't look like a video game either. And so that's the part, and that's my version of what happens when you have all this time on your hands and can be philosophical about the things that you've done for a long time. And in my case, I have more than enough time on my hands to think about it.
I think and have you come up with some cool ideas, or you're still in the brainstorming phase?
They're all limited by the fact that you can only put 4 people in a room together without going to jail. And so and it does take, so that, I mean, some things will have to relax in order for that to happen. But I have thought about it. My band, The New Deal, for the very few people out there who don't know about it, is a all improvised instrumental band that plays like real people playing music that normally comes out of machines. We like imitate dance music and then roll into jazz and then into rock and roll and into whatever, but we are an in the moment improvisational band. And as a result, in a way there's a really great opportunity to take something that is that is very intentionally in the present and work with people who can produce art that can be, or a visual experience that can be inspired by, manipulated by, generated by what we play musically. So like it's almost like if you married a video game programmer with our band, what would happen? And I'm only curious about that. I've been curious about it for a long time, but so many people who are in the production world around theater and making TV or making movies or making commercials or being lighting designers for concerts, nobody's doing anything. So there's lots of people who are interested in contemplating this as well. Because I think if you've been in the music business or the live music business or the live theater business or whatever, the writing's been on the wall for a long time about how, like, what's it going to take to step into the entertainment of the future. From, like, we were the kids who grew up with MTV and knew it before MTV and knew it after MTV, and then we know it post MTV, where we've watched it evolve into where music has become kind of Instagram culture in a way that it's part of like a lifestyle. And so we're aware of the fact that it's always an evolving it's an evolving career, but it's also an evolving space, and it's an evolving definition of what people want from musicians or music or concert experience or whatever. And I think we, as a result, know that it's like we can feel a change coming on. I can feel it, and in part because I'm bored with the paradigm. But I haven't, 6 months ago, if I told the entire music business, hey, why don't we stop playing for 2 years and really think about where we want to go next, it would sound absurd. But now we have an opportunity to do that. And maybe things will go back exactly to the same, but I think music fans will have been kind of forced in a way to contemplate consuming in a different way, which in some cases is actually maybe better. Like, if you don't have to spend
feeling the music, you feel it, and it, how do you emulate that in a digital way? Or how do you take what's happened in Italy, where somebody's singing off a balcony somewhere. Like,
yeah, I don't think it's about a replacement. And I think that there are unbeatable situations like somebody singing off a balcony. And I'm not proposing that people never see music live, but and I think that all of what I'm talking about is dependent on the fact that, for example, like if you consider how good your iPhone sounds as a speaker compared to what anything that size could produce sonically 10 years ago, it's an indication of how much tech we have on hand as the average consumer. Your Sonos sound system at home and your 60-inch television, which seems to be, I think, the new standard, is approaching like a small movie theater that I would go and watch, Star Wars Return of the Jedi on when I skipped school in 1986. And so you're right that it's not exactly the same experience, but some experiences don't need that crushing amount of volume. And in fact, maybe there are some contexts, it might even be more enjoyable in an intimate context. Like to go and see Sade play, for example, I would way rather listen to Sade with my Wicked home stereo or my average home stereo and a nice TV than go to the Sky Dome here and watch her play and pay $250 to see it. It's not about a replacement. In the interim, I think it's about a consideration of what can we do to elevate the experience that people are having. It seems like it's part of the fabric of how we've always lived. But like I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine where like imagine the parents of the people who went to Woodstock. And Woodstock was basically like the virtual reality experience of 1968 or whatever. And how something like that had never existed before. And people who didn't see it and had been had been enjoying listening to Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra and, Perry Como. And then all of a sudden their kids are getting their heads blown off at Woodstock and thinking like, this isn't the way you listen to music. And then whoever went and saw Woodstock would go back to look at their parents and be like, are you kidding? That's how you guys experience music? It's quiet, it's safe, it's nice, it's whatever. And so I think you're right, Ruthie. The expectation that things should continue.
Is there a silver lining to it all?
I hope there is for most people, because it's an extraordinary time that I hope we never have to go through again. But it's an extraordinary time also in that it creates, it raises the question that I think is the basis of why I'm here talking with you guys, is because it's it's not about just how are you killing time until this is all over, but what's the takeaway from all of this and the contemplation that is demanded of everybody, whether it's about relationships or one's job or one's career or one's interests or what's important to them or whatever. I hope it's inescapable for people. And certainly for me, it's been a great exercise in kind of cutting out the noise. I think we all, as a society, get pretty, it's almost like we pat ourselves on the back for being really, really busy. More busy means better person. And now that you're not, you have to find other ways to feel valuable or satisfied or whatever. And in fact, and nobody is around to witness and validate you. So it has to come from oneself. And that kind of presence is something that I think you have to work so hard to try and attain that in a pre-COVID life, with very little reward. People don't really reward you for being introspective, quiet, patient, taking your time, not servicing everything. And so I think it's almost inevitable that, for me at least, that coming out of this, I'll have got what I needed out of it. And I think it will be a tremendous amount of gratitude for the things that I have that at the moment I don't have. Like my dad is 79 and lives in Brazil, and I don't think I'll be able to see him for a year. And years at this age count a lot. And I really, really like parts of the world that I can't go to, and I really need to play concerts, and I wouldn't have been able to articulate those things as being that important. And now I'm certain of it, and I will never take that stuff for granted again.
Oh my God.